My name is Megan. I live at the Jersey Shore and I'm a senior in college. My house has been haunted for as long as I can remember. I'm not sure by what exactly though, since my house was built for my family and we were one of the first people to move into the neighborhood. I do know that there were once people that would hunt deer and other animals in my neighborhood while it was still a giant forest, but I really have no explanation for what's been happening to me. If I told you every single thing that's ever happened, we'd be here all week. So I'll just share with you what I consider to be the most important parts of my story. So, there's been a ghost that I believe originated from my house, or at least the general area, and has been following me around ever since I was a toddler. It all started when my mother put me down for a nap in my crib one day. I was at the age when I was in the beginning stages of being able to form words into intelligible sentences, but my vocabulary was still really limited. A little while after my mom put me down, she walked past my nursery door and heard me talking to someone. She came into the room and asked me who I was talking to. Obviously, I'm too young to remember this, but my mom swears by this story to this day. She said that I had told her I was talking to Rebecca. After a bit of blabbing about this girl to my mom, I told her that she was sad. My mom asked me why Rebecca was sad, and I told her that she couldn't find her mommy. My mom, being a bit more interested, asked me why. I shit you not. Apparently I told her that she couldn't find her because she, Rebecca, had fallen and broken her neck. Now, of course, at this age, I'd never even heard about it being feasible to break your neck, and I didn't even know that could be a thing at all, especially something that could prevent a girl from being with her mother. So, years later, my nursery turned into me and my older sister's computer room. One night when I was in middle school, my sister had gone out for the night with friends, so I jumped at the opportunity to spend the entire night scrolling through my Facebook on our computer. As I did this, my mother was downstairs on our main floor watching TV, and my dad was doing the same in the basement. As I was scrolling through statuses and liking friends' pictures, suddenly, I heard a young female voice right outside my room, and the legit air over our stairs say, "Mom?" The tone in the voice sounded like it was asking a question, not just stating the word. Before I was even able to process what I had heard, my mother downstairs responded and yelled up to me, "Yes, Megan?" Thinking that it was me who was speaking, but I had never said a word. When I told her that I had heard it too, but that it wasn't me, we went to the TV she was watching and rewound it for about a minute just to make sure that it wasn't anything in the background of her show. We didn't hear anything of the sort, and I wasn't watching any type of video myself. My dad's TV was too far away for either of us to hear anything, so there we were left with no explanation. As the years continued to go on, that nursery door would open many times on its own, and I'd hear footsteps outside of it constantly. Soon after, my room as well became home to an abundance of constant footsteps. It was once so loud that during family dinner, everyone just immediately got quiet to listen to what the hell was going on up there. I was away at university when this happened. A few months go by and I was home alone on the main floor, and the footsteps above me in my bedroom got so loud that I texted my sister to see if it was her. As I finished up my text, right before I pressed send, it audibly got about 10 times louder and faster. About a half hour after that, I saw a man on the opposite side of the house in my dad's office. He looked at me and just walked through the door that led to our garage door and suddenly disappeared out of view. It made no sense to me because here I was thinking we were dealing with the ghost of a little girl, but this was a fully grown man. It appeared like he was rotting. There were no specific facial features to be made out, and his shoulder-length hair looked dark, drenched and scraggly. This thing followed me to every dorm and apartment I've had since I've been at university, but the last story I'll share happened again in my family home. One night during my junior year of college, my sister and my dad left for Gettysburg for the weekend. I came back from school to keep my mom company, and on the first night there, shit was already going down. It was almost 12 a.m., and my mother was asleep in her room. I was downstairs making my second dinner for the night. As I was standing there cooking, I suddenly heard a female voice just talking its ass off. It was coming from my mom's room upstairs. I went up there, and it turned out to be the Alexa in her room. For some reason, it had just started reading a random audiobook. I told Alexa to stop and went back downstairs. 5 minutes later, she goes off again, reading some different random audiobook. At this point, I was freaked out, so I unplugged her and put her in my mom's closet. Another 5 minutes go by, and as I start to resume cooking my food, the Alexa in the family room next to the kitchen suddenly goes off in a male voice, again reading from that audiobook. I unplugged that one as well, and I FaceTimed my friend because, of course, I was scared at this point. As I'm talking to her for a while, I hear my mom walking around her room for a bit. She was supposed to be sleeping, so I went up to check on her and she was there in the bathroom. Her bedroom light was on, and she tells me it won't turn off no matter what. I walk over to it and reach for the knob on the lamp, but as I do this, it just starts shutting itself on and off, over and over again. It kept doing this, and mind you, to turn this light on or off, you have to turn the dial knob 360 degrees, which can take a couple of seconds, but this thing was just switching back and forth instantly. My friend was still on FaceTime with me as well, and saw all of this occurring in real time. This was a giant hell no for me, so I had my mom sleep in my sister's room that night. I'll end this long-ass story with this one last occurrence. Last week, I was on my main floor, watching TV, and my older sister was the only one upstairs. She calls down to tell me that my Alexa just randomly started speaking. I run upstairs and tell it to stop. I asked the Alexa what she just said, and she read in a male voice the name of the audiobook that was playing, and started reading again. I said fuck that. I unplugged her and went back downstairs. Literally 5 minutes later, though, my sister starts screaming for me, and I run up the stairs. My Alexa had just started reading the audiobook again. My sister swears up and down to every god out there that she had nothing to do with it, and to be honest, I believe her. She was just as scared as I was, and none of us mess around with this kind of stuff. I have no clue how this could happen, but I had to sleep on my couch for 2 days since it scared me so much. I have no explanation to what's happening in this house, but it's definitely centered around me. I'm sorry for this story being so long, but if any of you have any advice or anything, I'd love to hear it, because I don't know what to do or think at this point. This happened back in 2015 in Dayton, Ohio. I had just returned home from a 2-year mission trip for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A week after returning home, I found myself struggling to sleep very long, and I would wake up during the early hours of the morning. My internal clock was still used to the UK. I woke up at around 2 a.m. and pulled up my phone and logged into Facebook to see who was online. As I was browsing through, I received a message from a friend. Let's call her Sarah. The first message she sent me was something along the lines of, "I'm trying to exercise my house. There's this black mass gliding across my living room floor." Somewhat freaked out, but having some experience with these situations because of my mission, I told her to quickly leave the house and stay at her mother's just down the road. A few days later, she invited me over to her house for dinner and showed me where she lived, as she had recently purchased the house. Having just returned from a mission trip, I was accustomed to and even sensitive to things spiritual. As she was giving me a tour of the place, I felt it void of any good spiritual feelings. In essence, I felt the Spirit of God did not dwell within that house, and it had a miserable feeling inside. At first, she took me upstairs to her bedroom, which is also the attic. As she led me up the stairs, I noticed the stairway looked oddly dark, and as I stepped onto a landing, I had the strongest feeling that I had just passed by someone else. Even though clearly nobody else could be seen next to me, I still remember that feeling to this day, like I was being hatefully glared at. I felt this on the way up and down the stairs. Next, she took me into her kitchen, which led down into her basement in turn. Before she took me down into the basement, she said, "This is where all the crazy stuff happens." As we stepped down, the basement was dim and cold, and cluttered with boxes of old belongings, I guess how most basements in older houses would normally be. We just stood there as she casually talked to me for a moment, when we both stopped dead in our conversation. What we heard didn't come from the basement, but upstairs, more particularly her attic bedroom. We could hear angry, heavy-sounding footsteps stomping across the floor. I could see the sheer terror in Sarah's face as she looked up. As the stomping across her wooden floor continued, she said, "It's never been up there before, and it's never been that angry. I don't think it likes you being here. It probably knows you just served God on your mission, and it's threatened or something." Right away we went upstairs and made our way to the front door. Again, as we passed by the attic stairway, the door was open, and it seemed so dark. Once again, I could feel a menacing glare from a being I couldn't see. Keep in mind that nobody else was in the house with us, and if anybody had entered the house, we would have definitely heard it. And keep in mind that nobody else was in the house with us, and if anyone had entered the house, we would have heard it. As we stepped out into the yard, we spoke about what had just happened. I could feel eyes watching us from her attic window. During the 2 weeks after the events took place, my friend Sarah began to experience even more paranormal activity. She would often wake up to the sounds of her boyfriend's voice without him being there, and on occasion she would experience sleep paralysis. She could hear a woman crying, and an additional male voice swearing at the crying woman in her kitchen. After some convincing, I managed to get her to agree to let me and a few other missionaries from my church help her and cleanse her house of spirits. On a Sunday afternoon, Sarah, myself, and 4 other missionaries spent the day doing service for her. We went through every single room and helped her clean, organize, and unpack more boxes to give her house a more at-home feeling. After that, we all sat down in her living room and talked, finally kneeling down together. I know that the method we used for casting out any bad spirits isn't what most would think of, and it's nothing as extravagant as shown in movies, but it's a simple and quick method. We gathered around, and one of the missionaries offered a prayer. Using the priesthood authority he was given of God and the church, he commanded any unclean spirits to leave the house, and invited all things good and of God to bless her home. Unlike the movies, no drama or anything else crazy happened. As we finished the prayer, though, we could feel a distinct change in the feeling within her house. It was like all the rooms suddenly felt calm and peaceful. We committed her to strengthen her relationship with God through prayer and Bible study, and doing so would help maintain a spiritual environment in her home. As the weeks and months went by, I continued to follow up with Sarah several times, and she hadn't experienced any more paranormal or demonic events. One night, though, she messaged me and told me she heard a woman crying once again, and the same male voice swearing at the woman. Since then, she's experienced shadows looking at her and peering at her and other guests from around corners. And every now and then, her dog will bark at random areas of her house, as if it's barking at someone. In order to understand this story, I have to first give a brief description of my house layout. Above my garage, there's an attic, and a tiny window that faces outwards towards the driveway. The window is blocked from the attic, though, and if you were to enter the attic, A plywood square would be blocking you from looking out the window. There's no access to the 3-foot space between them, and the only entrance to the attic is in through the garage. I'm a high school volleyball player. I need to practice since I can't go to team practices because of the virus. I was standing outside practicing and hitting my volleyball against the house, right above the garage door and underneath the window. There was about a 3 to 4 foot space there, so it was plenty to practice with without breaking the window on accident. I was out there doing this same practice one day, and occasionally I would softly tap the window on accident with my ball. No big deal, it just bounces off. It happens quite often, in fact. My parents don't really care because even if I did break it, it doesn't matter because it's not really connected to the rest of the house. I hit the window and retrieved the ball, starting to hit it against the wall once again, when all of a sudden I heard a tap. I didn't know where it came from, so I didn't think much of it, and I just kept hitting the ball against the wall. I hit the window once more a little bit later in the day, and then again, the tap. At least 15 seconds after I hit the window, so it couldn't just be the sound of the ball reverberating or something. This time I looked up, and I realized it had come from the window. This time I purposely hit the ball right into it, to see if it would happen once again. Bang! The ball impacted the window quite fiercely, but nothing else happened. I pretty much forgot about the whole incident and chalked it off to a weird coincidence. A few days later, I was out again practicing the exact same way. Once more I hit the window. The tap happened again. This time, I was certain that's where it was coming from, but there was just no way it could be so. I was home alone, and even if someone was up there was no way to get to the window. I hit the window again on purpose, and I heard the exact same tap. I decided to try one more time. I hit it again out of curiosity, but this time, I saw something move. I started freaking out, because how the hell would something even be up there? There was no access except past me. I got really scared. I went inside and didn't say anything about it, in hopes that it would just go away on its own. A few days later, I returned to it. I didn't even hit the window this time. I could just see something moving around in the darkness. It was too dark up there to make out what it was, but something definitely moved. I hit the ball again. This time, I could see the silhouette of a person. I was certain that it was a person. But how? Nobody could get into the attic, let alone the blocked-off space. Nothing added up. I opened my garage and climbed up the attic ladder to try and find out just what the hell was going on. "Hello?" I said, hesitantly. The taps returned, but this time, it was coming from the other side of the wood. They were louder and faster. I almost fell down the ladder scrambling out of fear. Nobody was home, and I didn't think to call the police. When my parents got home, I told them, but obviously they didn't believe me. I tried once more to play volleyball in the same location once after that incident, and the taps returned, so I immediately went outside. I haven't tried again since I'm too scared. Do I call the cops and tell my parents again? I mean, there's no possible way someone could be up there, but I know someone or something is. My name's Tony, and I'm 54 years old now. As a teenager, I lived in a small town in central Virginia. Our town had barely 2,000 people in it. I was 17 in 1983, and one of my best friends, Chris, lived across the street from a peculiar house. Even before I knew any of its history, the house was always creepy to me because it looked remarkably similar to the Myers house from the movie Halloween. When I first moved to town in 1980, a family lived in the house, and their daughter had been close friends with Chris. Her name was Joy. Joy told Chris that every member of her family had seen ghosts in their house. I'm not sure if anyone believed them, but one night, The whole family piled into the family car, took off to a motel, and never returned to the house again. It was assumed that this was a reaction to another supposed ghost encounter. I moved to town and became friends with Chris the same year Joy's family took off. I never really got to know them, so all of that previous information was secondhand to me through Chris. Joy's old house remained empty. By empty, I mean that no one bought the place. Actually, the house still contained most of the furniture and a lot of the family's belongings as well. They had literally just grabbed what they could carry and just left into the night. And Chris and I and our other friends liked to poke around in the house just to see what we could find. Over the years, kids had thrown rocks and broken every single window. Every square inch of the floor upstairs, downstairs, and even on the stairway was covered with broken glass. And one day in October 1983, Chris and I decided to skip school. We did this way too often, and it wasn't like getting a real day off either because we had to stay completely out of sight. Our small town was just full of nosy people who would turn you in for skipping. This day, Chris and I decided to hide upstairs at Joy's old house. There was still a bed and furniture upstairs. We carefully snuck in and plopped down upstairs to read, talk, and nap the day away. Early in the afternoon, though, we could suddenly hear footsteps downstairs. Heavy footsteps that crushed the broken glass with each step. We immediately thought someone had either seen or heard us through a window and was coming up to bust us. This old house had vents built into the floors so that the heat from downstairs would float up through the vent to the upstairs. A lot of the houses in the area had these. They were basically just an ornate grill covering a large hole in the floor. As we heard the footsteps crunching glass directly below us in what used to be the living room, we carefully peeked through the vent to try and see who was downstairs. With the footsteps directly below us, we could see no one downstairs. Then suddenly, the footsteps were upstairs at the top of the staircase, right outside the door. Chris and I whispered quickly that we would fling the door open, act surprised, and act like we were just passing by when we thought we had heard kids in the house and came to investigate. We walked to the door of the bedroom. The footsteps walked right up to the other side and stopped. We threw open the door, and there was no one there. Chris and I stood silently looking at each other, completely confused. After a moment, we began to search the house, the entire house. No matter what room I was in while searching, I could hear Chris in another part of the house because the crunching of the glass was so loud. Finally, Chris went outside and completely circled the exterior. From the inside, I could hear him circling around because the house was covered on all sides by trees, and there was a thick blanket of crunchy dry leaves all around. We had both heard the same thing. The footsteps were heavy and made by something with two legs that sounded like the standard human walking. Whatever it was, it had enough weight to crush glass underfoot at least. After the fact, we realized we had never heard the footsteps on the stairs either. They just went from directly below us to right outside the upstairs door. The house was completely empty, but we would have heard someone approaching or leaving because of the dry leaves as well. Neither of us believe in ghosts, and we won't say what we experienced was a ghost either. What we will say is that in all these years, neither of us have been able to come up with any other logical explanation. I'm still in contact with Chris thanks to social media, although we haven't met face to face in almost 33 years. After such a long time, you begin to doubt your older memories. You can wonder if you're mentally embellishing these things. And Chris and I haven't shared this story with many people. They would tend to think we were lying or imagining things. When I told my wife this story a few years ago, I contacted Chris and asked him to give his version of these events. What do you remember that day we skipped school at Joy's house? His story was identical to mine. Joy's house was demolished in 1984. Today, the wooded area around it has grown so much that there's no sign a house was ever there at all. This happened back in 2007, when my daughter was about 6 months old, and I was 30 and a new mum. I live in England, by the way. I often came over to my mum and stepdad's regularly, because my mum would look after my daughter while I was at university. I was a mature student studying English literature. My mum had gone out for a bit, and I was trying to give her some time to herself. My stepfather had dementia, so a few hours to herself was exactly what she needed. My stepfather was at the point with his dementia that he couldn't really make any conversations. He still enjoyed the odd logger at home, though, and going to collect his papers. My stepfather Ian told me in fact that he was going to go get one right now, and would be back very soon. The walk for him was probably only about 20 minutes. So there it was, just me, my mum's dog Bailey, a Rhodesian Ridgeback, and Tatum, my daughter. The layout of the bungalow that she lived in is quite important. You came into the front door straight into the hallway. To the left was my mum's bedroom. Then after that, along the corridor on the left was my stepfather's room. They slept separately these days because he would often mess the bed. Next to his room at the end of the corridor, facing the front door, was the toilet, and next to that, opposite my stepfather's room, was the bathroom with a bath/shower and sink. And when you came into the hallway from the front door, if you turned right, you would walk straight into a large lounge, go through glass doors to a kitchen dining room, and then through a study area. Off the kitchen were patio doors leading to a garden, and then a side alley that led to a shed where the tools were kept, and the lawnmower. Then you could enter the garage through a separate door. There I was, changing my daughter, and all of a sudden I saw what I thought was dark trousers and a dark jacket just past the door. I didn't hear Ian, my stepfather, return, but I thought he might as well must have. He always dressed smartly. I put the rest of Tatum's clothing on and picked her up. Bailey was following us, and I went through all the rooms in the bungalow calling out for Ian, in case perhaps he had fallen over. I went into the shed, the garage, I looked everywhere. I began to get a funny feeling all of a sudden all over the place, like my hair was standing on end. I decided to put the TV on, and just put it down to me being a bit tired. About 30 minutes later, Ian returned. He apologized for being so long. He decided to go to another paper shop in the end. I didn't tell my mum for a long time, but I mentioned it probably about 6 months later after this. She looked at me and said, "You know what? I saw a man in a suit go from the front door and disappear down the corridor to where Ian's room was." We didn't talk about it again until the man over the road passed away. We went to his funeral and wake. I spoke to the people that used to own my mum's bungalow, and I told them about the ghost as well. The wife told me that the man who lived there before her had died. They had known him as they had lived in the area for a while, and she said he always loved to dress like that. And to say my blood ran cold at the moment was more than a bit of an understatement. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you liked the video, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. And if you have any comments about the way I narrate, the way I do my videos, or anything, please be sure to leave it in the comments below, as I could always use feedback on how to make my channel just that little bit better. For those of you who are at all interested about my life at all, the next school semester begins on August the 22nd, so that means it's going to be starting pretty soon, so I'll be going to school. I don't think that's going to affect the schedule at all. I'll still be making videos once every 2 days or so, since I really feel like that schedule is the most comfortable for me, and I really enjoy making videos, and it helps me relax during all this craziness going on. Anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know that in case something does affect the schedule, I will let you guys know right away. As always, if you guys want to contact me at all, then please be sure to take a look in the description below. It contains links to all of my social media, including my Gmail, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch accounts. If you guys would like to get a fast response, be sure to message me on either Twitter or Gmail because those are the ones I check most often. I don't check Facebook quite as much, so it might take me a little bit longer to reply to you on there. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include the name of the story if it has one, what type of story it is in the tagline if it applies, and also be sure to include how you would like to be credited in the description of the story the video appears in. Please, if you guys send in stories, make sure it's at least a couple of paragraphs long with as much detail as you are comfortable describing, and please make sure it follows basic grammatical etiquette, because sometimes I get stories that are just a little bit too short. They're only about a paragraph or so long, and those take me about 30 seconds to read, so they're just a little bit too short to be put into the videos, unfortunately. As well, I must shout out my friend Alan, who does horror art, and he also does commissions as well, and sells his own merchandise and stuff, and has his art in galleries and everything. Links to all of his social media will be in the description below as well. Be sure to check him out and give him some love because he is a very good personal friend of mine, and he also does some excellent art. If you're curious about the music used in this video, it can always be found in the description below the video in the order which it appears in. I have links to the artists as well. As for the new channel, I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with that. I will try to give it a shot this weekend. I was a little bit busy getting ready for school and stuff this semester, so we'll see how that turns out. I still got to decide on mascot and everything for it too. Anyways, I think that's pretty much it, guys, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.